I can't begin to tell you how many pieces I've made and sold of this item over the years. And so I thought it's a good time to share. All you need is an oxyacetylene torch and some know-how. So what I'm going to do is let you watch over my shoulder exactly how I made this piece titled A Simple Fire. Here's what the jig fixture looks like, and it's just a little holder that I made for making these quickly. Ideally, that's a good weld because I got a hole all the way through the middle. Don't have to spend so much time drilling, but that has to be a clean hole all the way through the middle next. These log piles are meant to be birch logs, of course, and so now it's time. They're all painted white, so it's time to add some coloration to them. Birch trees are not all white and stuff. They got a lot of black and brown and purples sometimes. All you want is the worst brush in your whole grouping that has just a few bristles sticking out. That's the best kind to get. And then you're just going to dip forward in here and just barely touch it. And then come back to the log. Bob Ross used to say, just a few hairs and some air. This is important, is that you want to make sure that the lines are perpendicular to the surface. You got to go exactly around. On birch trees, those lines don't go at an angle, so you got to be real careful. Next, the little striation lines and knot holes and imperfections and things you just kind of throw into your log very simply. Just go into your batch and find a couple colors that's gonna make it look like the color of the bare wood that sticks out at the end of your branch. So this would be a chainsaw cut end of a branch. So I'm just gonna paint it to look like it's the raw end of a white birch, which is kind of a lighter colored wood anyway. So just do that, and then I'll do the bottoms as well, so you can see what that looks like. When getting into the splatter technique, there's some things you need to know about, is the size of the rod makes a difference as to the size of the splatter. Obviously, there's 1/4 inch rod, 3/16, 1/8 inch, and 1/16 inch. How far you hold it away as you're melting the drip makes a difference in the size of the splatter as well. So the distance away, the type of metal you're using, and the surface you're going to be doing it on makes a difference. Here's changing the angle of the slope as you're dripping it on. The same metal surface, just treated different ways, will create a different effect with your end result, and so will is if you drip it onto a different metal. So this is copper dripped on stainless steel, and here's brass dripped on stainless steel. So everything creates a different effect. Before you do your dripping of the brass droplets and stuff, it's going to be a lot of smoke and stuff. If you get too close to it, I'll just show you what happens. You want to have kind of a carburizing flame on here. Basically, you want a really soft tip there. You don't want an oxidizing tip where it's a real sharp pinpoint of a tip. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of popping and sputtering. So with a carburizing flame, what happens is you get less smoke and better droplets. There you see a droplet right there. So that's a good angle. You want to have a good ventilation system for sure. Now I'll just drip a few of these I'll show you the difference. See how that smoke happens? It's from going a little too fast. Flames are a little too elongated, so I'm going to cut them back a little bit by flattening, lowering this down a little bit. That way they'll spread out a little bit more and look more like a flame should look. There you go. Now I'm getting some really good splatters. Here you can really see the difference in the drips. This one's dropped from straight overhead and dropped straight down, boom, from a high point. This is from a midpoint held at an angle, and this one at midpoint held at an even greater angle. So you can see that the splatter is even more elongated. Each one has its own play in a piece of artwork, and there are all kinds of artwork that you can use these different splatters on. They can be copper or brass. After a while you're going to get quite a pile of these drippings, and you can see that each one's got its own flame character that you can use. Now that you got a good pile of them going, you pick out one and you say, okay, that's a good looking flame right there. And then you want to clean it up and then put a coat of Renaissance wax on it as a preservative. So then I just use a wire brush here like so, and give it a little touch here. Gets that little bit of scale off of it and polishes that right up nicely. You can see right there. Whoops. Nice, clean, shiny. With the birchwood log triangle stand finished, now it's time to build the flame. So you go through the drippings and you find drippings that look like flames, and most of them should if you angled everything properly. There's different splatters you can get, as you know. So here's another one. But you have to modify them first. So what you want to do is, because flames don't lay flat, they kind of have a curve around in the middle. Well, we're going to make them curve around anyway. So here, what you want to do is you make a little cut along the bottom and then flare it outward, and then another cut at that same angle up to the same point, and then again outward, and then you cut right down the middle just past where you flared them out here. Now what that does is it allows you to push your thumb in here, pull these together, and there you have a belly in your flame. See? Here's a quick trim job. Cut the very end off. You go at an angle up a little bit and then flare it out to the side, and then flip it over, do the other side out at a slight angle, and then cut that to the side, and then up the middle like so. And what this does is it allows you to make your flame go either this way, you can bend it this way, or you can create a belly if you want by putting your thumb in here and overlapping these together. Now that will be a flame that sits kind of on the outside edge, because the outside flames want to come up and flame around like so. And then that is going to get stuck right in here. And this is a little bowl I made out of Sculpey clay. You can use green oil based clay. Anything that epoxy won't stick to is okay. So here we go. I've got some 5-minute epoxy, and then I'm going to take this epoxy, mix it up good, and it's a pretty simple operation. Just keep going, I don't know, until it looks uniform. And then I'm going to take this whole little wad here. I usually use a JB Weld, but I wanted to give this a try too, to see how it works. And you put that in the little bowl at the bottom. See? You don't want to put too much because you're going to have to cut some of it away later. So now what I want to do is build my flame by sticking these little these little bellied out pieces. I just stick those into the epoxy. Get a little bit of epoxy on the item first, and you can stick it actually right down into that clay, and it'll hold it there for you like a third hand or something. And then I'll put another one here. So you create a little bit of a wraparound effect of your fire. And you can use 4, 5, whatever looks good. There's no rhyme or reason. So anyway, we're gonna let that set up now. And in about 5 minutes, be able to pull that out of there, and it should be close to be ready to set right in the little tripod. Here's one that's already done. So I'm gonna take it out of the clay holder, and you see how that's working in there? Okay, now that excess stuff right there, that's gonna have to be ground off with a probably a Dremel drill. Go around and take all that excess off of there. You can use a burring tool as well. And then once that's all taken off, it'll look kind of like this. You don't want to take too much off because the glue is there to hold the flame together on its own. This is going to get glued again once it goes into this position. Next, gonna need some MIG wire. Okay, it's gonna be about maybe about 3 of those circles, about 8 inches in diameter, and it's going to be our smoke trails. Then I want to take and put a pinch point right there. What I want to end up with is 3 loops at the bottom and a total of 6 smoke trails. That hole was drilled through the bottom. That's where this part comes in. Those 3 loops, you just push them together and then just force them through that hole, and then you take a little tiny nail and you put it through the loops there and then draw it back real tight after you put in some epoxy glue. The epoxy was applied on the nail. You can see it there, sticking out, and then it's drawn tight as it can be drawn. Then these, where they split in half, you want to separate them. Before I mount the flame in place here, that's going to be epoxy next, I want to make sure that all of my smoke trails are going to kind of be equidistant from each other. And now what I'm going to do is epoxy this right in the center there, and that's going to hold all those wires in position. What's important here is to make sure that the flame is standing erect when it's sitting down on the table top. And then when you put your glue in, you don't want to put too much in there. First I'll put in too much. Make sure that all these wires have got a good coating down in there, and then there's a good little dip coating here. You just dip it in that puddle of glue and then set this aside so you know that it's already stuck to the bottom, and then you clear out any excess and stuff and then put this back in. Then once all this hardens, everything else will go back in, and all this will get ground out with a Dremel drill. And then I'll go in here with the little burring tools and stuff like that. And what that does is it takes that epoxy and turns it a little bit grayish in color with some black in here and there, and it looks just like ashes. Before I start pulling on the wires, I want to protect the surface out. So I use this Renaissance wax here. It's used in museums worldwide. It's really good for coating metal. So it's impervious to the fingerprints and the little acid on your finger that'll cause it to rust. I'll go back over it again and do another layer of Renaissance wax after I'm done, very carefully. But right now I can be rough with it and everything else. Once you get the smoke trails done, you got to be very careful to keep them in place. Now the way you do a smoke trail is you start off by putting pressure on a wire with your fingertip. And the deeper the amount of pressure on your fingertip and the angle you pull determines how much bend is going to go into that wire. So you can see what I just created there. We'll bend, another bend at 90 degrees, another bend at 90 degrees, turn it one more time and bend it 90 degrees more, and that's what you end up with. These are 3 different simple fires, and make them in multiples like this. It takes about maybe 2 to 2.5 hours to make one of these, I think, combined with everything. Depends on how quick you are with doing the smoke swirls and stuff. Those can gobble a lot of time because you just tend to fuss with them, and it's kind of fun and it's kind of aggravating. I just want to teach somebody else how to make them so that they can make some money selling them. They're not really difficult to make. A bit of glue and a few tricks, and you can make something that looks like a little fire. Here, let's take a little closer look here.